prosecutor and law professor at the University of Alabama. Rick, I'll start with you. Clearly, this is an authoritarian move by the President of the United States. But from your perspective, is this just another power grab from Trump, or is this just a distraction from other things that are wrong in the administration? Which do you think is the primary motivation here?
You know, Michael Wolff and others have reported in the last few days, Donald Trump kept saying, I want something big. I want something big. I need a distraction. And this is a pretty big distraction. I believe that Donald Trump both loves authoritarianism, loves the use of the military against American citizens, and needs a distraction. But this has a side benefit to reassemble some of the cohesiveness of the Republican base that has been shattered by Epstein, because it's not all of them, but a meaningful fraction of his base voters will be happy to watch video of young black men being arrested and chained hand and foot in the streets. That is what Trump's feral sense of his own base will lead him to do. And again, it's not every Republican in the country, but there are a lot of them in his base who have been very disappointed about the Epstein matter, and this is a way for him to bring them back home.
Joyce, I want to play some sound from Maddow last night, just talking about Trump's authoritarianism, and get your thoughts on the other side.
He wants U.S. military force deployed on U.S. soil facing inward as a show of force to the American people about what he and the government can do to you. And we clearly are now in the part of the attempted authoritarian takeover where our authoritarian leader just starts trying to turn our own military to face us, the people of this country.
Joyce, I read your Substack article, which was very informative about what the laws are at play here. So tell us a little bit about a very important ruling that's going to happen this week that could have a huge impact on the ability of Donald Trump to do the kinds of things that he did in L.A. And what he's attempting to do right now in Washington, D.C.
Right. It's a complicated issue because what Trump is doing in the District of Columbia depends on special circumstances there. His ability as president to take control of the police force, the control he already has over the National Guard. If he'd like to go into other states, he faces that same problem he faced in Los Angeles, which is the Posse Comitatus Act, the prohibition on the use of the military for domestic law enforcement. And that's what Rachel's talking about when she says turning the military inward, right? We're talking about Donald Trump saying to Americans through the creation of this proposed rapid response force, through any sort of deployment of the military, he's saying to American citizens, I can bring you to heel. I can make you behave if you step out of line. It's threat. It's intimidation. It's very clear what he's doing here. In California, there's a trial. I don't know that we'll get a ruling this week, Jason, but the ultimate issue there is whether Trump crossed the line in Los Angeles and used military folks who were deployed there, the National Guard folks, for improper purposes under Posse Comitatus.
Rick, you know, this authoritarianism is taking the form of the military. It's taken a form of threats against media companies. It's taken a form of threats against universities. But I want to talk a little bit about something that we used to all share and more or less agree on, which is Trump's interference with the Smithsonian. We are now in a situation where it looks like the White House is about to vet Smithsonian museums to fit Trump's historical vision. I, as a college professor and someone who enjoyed many opportunities to go see free museums when I was a kid in Washington, D.C., am disturbed by this, not just for what it means now, but what it means down the road. Talk just a little bit about the danger of a president who has the time to start monkeying around with what we have in national museums that tell our nation's history.
Authoritarians rely on rewriting history in their image. They rely on reshaping what were common facts among everyone into a narrow cast version of themselves. This would be enormously familiar to anyone in North Korea. This would be familiar to anyone in communist China. This is the same sort of revisionist history where Donald Trump is going to go in, and I won't doubt that by the time he's done, you know, there will be no reference to any African American in the Smithsonian who's accomplished anything in this country. This is a through line, again, that pleases a part of his base that are the people who are addicted to the culture war outrage all the time. They're addicted to the constant idea that there's this woke conspiracy trying to oppress, the long put upon white male. This is a transparent and shallow attempt at this, but it is exactly out of the dictator's playbook. It whitewashes history. It erases history. It makes history into something that is an ideological moment that is reshaped by the desires of one man. It's sick and it's wrong, but it's very much on brand for Trump's authoritarian wannabe status.
Joyce, I want to move back to the sort of city at large as opposed to just its museums. We're going to have 30 days of the president of the United States or whoever happens to be under him controlling the police in the city. OK, fine. What happens after the 30 days? Does that mean that these troops will now leave? Does that mean that, the city at that point will sue and tell them they have to go? We don't have enough room or space for them. What could potentially happen after these 30 days? Or could this be a situation where the president just keeps extending this out and out and out and out and out as a test case for what he might do somewhere else?
So the D.C. Code home rule gives Trump 30 days. And after that, if he wants to continue with this sort of expanded control of law enforcement in the city, he needs permission from Congress. I'm not certain about very many things in Congress these days, but I feel pretty good that Democrats could mount a filibuster to keep that sort of a measure from passing. So I think it's very unlikely he'll get that. And the question becomes, what does he do at the end of the 30 days? Maybe Rick is right and he's had his big distraction and Epstein is no longer on people's minds and he doesn't need to go forward. But if he needs it, this is a president who has used power in unprecedented ways, who has reread our laws and sort of tortured them into a shape that I think the people who passed them did not intend. So the question will become, will he push the issue and try to keep control based on these utterly bogus claims of rampant crime, which, we all know wrong. Statistics don't bear it out.
It has been more than 24 hours since President Trump placed the Washington, D.C. Police Department under direct federal control. He said he's doing this to help combat crime. Today, we have some new answers and some new questions on how this could all play out. This afternoon, the White House gave an update on the latest numbers, saying approximately 850 officers and agents have been surged across the city. We do not know specifically how many of those 850 are National Guard troops or National Park Police or FBI agents, which have all been mobilized. The White House says those officers and agents made 23 arrests, including arrests for homicide, firearms offenses, possession with intent to distribute, narcotics, lewd acts, stalking, possession of a high-capacity magazine, driving under the influence, and fare evasion in D.C.'s metro. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said the president's order will be reevaluated in 30 days. Just moments ago, Trump border czar Tom Homan weighed in on the president's action with this stark assessment.
I think the president made the right call on it, cracking down on crime in D.C. I mean, I've lived in D.C. for several years. I won't walk the streets without having a gun. I mean, it's the violence and the crime is terrible here.
The Trump administration has said these actions in D.C. are just the beginning, but we should note it isn't the beginning. Los Angeles was the beginning. You might recall in June, Trump deployed roughly 4,000 California National Guard troops and 700 Marines to Los Angeles, the stated goal being to combat, quote, violent insurrectionist mobs, unquote, in and around L.A. The protests were in response to immigration enforcement action around the city. Critics say that troop deployment quickly became fairly pointless. Or as the Los Angeles Times put it, quote, the National Guard came to L.A. to fight unrest. Troops ended up fighting boredom, unquote. All but 250 National Guard troops had left by August. Very little actual crime was charged from those protests, regardless of how easy it is for prosecutors anywhere to get a grand jury to indict anyone. So easy you can get an indictment of a ham sandwich and all that. Trump's top federal prosecutor in L.A. struggled to secure indictments in the protest cases. Out of at least 38 people charged with felonies, only 7 out of 38 were indicted, according to the L.A. Times. Then there's the actual cost of that operation. Shortly after the L.A. deployment began, the Department of Defense testified to Congress that the Pentagon would spend $134 million on it. $134 million. California Governor Gavin Newsom has filed a Freedom of Information Act request to reveal the total cost. But despite the lack of indictable crime and bored troops and a hefty price tag, Trump recently said this.
You look at Chicago, how bad it is. You look at Los Angeles, how bad it is. We have other cities that are very bad. New York has a problem. And then you have, of course, Baltimore and Oakland. We don't even mention that anymore. They're so far gone. We're not going to let it happen. We're not going to lose our cities over this.
The crime is a problem all over the United States, and it has been for decades. But you have to wonder, why would President Trump bring up Los Angeles in his list of very bad cities? Is that an admission that his blueprint plan for troop deployment in American cities didn't work? Or does he think it didn't go far enough? CNN's Brian Todd has been out on the streets of D.C. spotting all the additional law enforcement and trying to get a clearer picture on how they're all going to work together.
I think this is long overdue. I've been one of the National Guards in this area for years. I like it. I love it. I feel safe already.
Longtime D.C. resident and community advocate Sandra Seegers is welcoming President Donald Trump's law enforcement and National Guard surge in the nation's capital because of the crime she sees in her neighborhood, much of which she says goes unaddressed and causes her to live in fear.
When I wait a while, listen for sirens or more shooting or running, then I come to the door and see what's going on.
Seegers is one of two community leaders we spoke to in Southeast D.C.'s Ward 8, one of the city's areas hardest hit by crime and poverty.
Children can't be children anymore. So they're running and playing. It just looks like the police might be coming next or somebody chasing them. So this is how bad it is.
Last night, according to the White House, 850 officers and agents dispatched by Trump from federal agencies like the FBI were out patrolling D.C. streets, making 23 arrests.
This is a death threat from the Oval Office. And he's making it towards, especially cities that have black mayors and some of the more diverse cities in the United States, even though in many cases those cities do not have, especially high crime rates. Some of them have much lower crime rates than red cities, than less diverse cities in some cases, and many rural areas, many white rural areas, and rural areas in general. And clearly what Trump is saying is, if you resist me, I will use the force of the state. And the force of the state has the right to end lives. And you might say, well, yes, but only in reasonable cases. We've seen throughout the entirety of American history in the last few years how rarely police are held accountable. There's a reason why Chauvin was such a big deal, because he was actually held accountable for what he did to George Floyd, right? Like, you know what I mean? And there's no doubt in my mind that if Trump would pardon the J-stick thugs, he would pardon any member of the police he's sending out there or whatnot. He would pardon them too. And so he's trying to threaten you. And indeed, this is all Americans. He's using his perceived enemy cities, perceived enemy parts of the population as examples. But don't doubt for a second that even if you live in the right kind of community, that he wouldn't do this to you as well if you dared raise your voice in opposition. So people should be concerned. Of course they should be. But they should not be paralyzed by this. The protests in LA worked. The protests made fun of his birthday parade. Those worked. Trump hates when you stand up to him.